You. My family lives in Western Pennsylvania, where fracked gas wells have become a common sight, yet the toxic impacts of fracking on the community are immense, from contaminated groundwater to poisonous emissions. Will you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking your first day in office, adding the United States to the list of countries who have banned this devastating practice?
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So, yes, and starting with what we can do on day one around public lands, right? And then there has to be legislation. But yes, and this is something I've taken on in California. I have a history of working on this issue. And to your point, we have to just acknowledge that the residual impact of fracking is enormous in terms of the impact on the health and safety of communities. Yeah, so thank you.
So would you ban offshore drilling?
Yes, and I've, again, worked on that.
Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman.
Oh, cannabis?
What are your views on cannabis?
I just feel strongly people should not be going to jail for smoking weed. And we know historically what that has meant and who has gone to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Second, I just think we have come to a point where we have to understand that we need to legalize it and stop criminalizing this behavior. And I've actually, this is not a new position for me. I have felt for a long time we need to legalize it. So that's where I am on that.
I love it.
Okay. I'm prepared to take executive action and put in place a ban on the importation of assault weapons into our country. But we still have to deal with the over 2 million assault weapons that are currently in the streets of America. And so a buyback program is a good idea. We're not taking anybody's guns away, so stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. I do believe that we need to do buybacks. I support buybacks.
How mandatory is your gun buyback program?
It's mandatory. We want to ban assault weapons.
We need an assault weapons ban.
We need reasonable gun safety laws in this country, starting with universal background checks and a renewal of the assault weapon ban. I'm also in favor of the assault weapons ban, of universal background checks, red flag law.
Trying to look, part of this movement, and it's not just a moment, it's a movement, standing on the shoulders of the movements before. Part of this has to be about changing the system, rehauling the system, upending the system. And so that piece of it, you're right. Under this Attorney General, I have no hope for it being implemented. But God willing, he will be out of that office shortly. And then we need to have a requirement that that office do the right thing going forward.
So then if you're for overhauling, where do you stand on defund the police?
Look, right. So here's the thing. Defund the police. The issue behind it is that we need to reimagine how we are creating safety. And when you have many cities that have 1/3 of their entire city budget focused on policing, we know that is not the smart way and the best way or the right way to achieve safety. If for too long, the status quo thinking has been you get more safety by putting more cops on the street. Well, that's wrong. Because, by the way, if you want to look at upper middle class suburban neighborhoods, they don't have that patrol car. They don't have those police walking those streets. But what they do have, they have well-funded schools. What they do have is home ownership, high home ownership rates. What they do have are thriving small businesses. What they do have is access to public health and mental health services. So this whole movement is about rightly saying we need to take a look at these budgets and figure out whether it reflects the right priorities.
2022, 2023, there were record border crossings. Your administration took hundreds of executive actions. It didn't stem the flow. Numbers kept going up. Finally, in 2024, just in June, 3 weeks before the first presidential debate with Joe Biden, you institute executive actions that had a dramatic impact, really shut down people crossing over. Why didn't your administration do that in 2022, 2023?
First of all, you're exactly right, Anderson. And as of today, we have cut the flow of immigration by over half. In fact, the numbers I saw most recently, illegal immigration
But if
is
it was
low.
that easy with that executive
Let me-
action, why not do it in 2022, 2023?
Because we were working with Congress and hoping that actually we could have a long-term fix to the problem instead of a short-term fix.
You couldn't have done one and both at the same time?
Well, here's the thing. We have to understand that ultimately this problem is going to be fixed through congressional action.
I mean, you did raise your hand saying in a debate when asked if border crossing should be decriminalized, but obviously that is not your position.
I never intended, nor will I ever allow America to have a border that is not secure. I believe we need to deal with illegal immigration. There needs to be consequences, which is why part of my plan that I have outlined, and again, please go to KamalaHarris.com. Sorry to throw a website on you, but why not? And you will see that part of my plan includes what we need to do to actually do more as it relates to putting resources in, including increasing penalties.
To visit the border.
We are going to the border. We've been to the border. So
You haven't been to the border.
I haven't been to Europe. And I don't understand the point that you're making.
Standing there saying abolish ICE.
Yeah.
Is that a position that you agree with?
We need to probably think about starting from scratch.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct. We will not rest until Congress provides all dreamers with permanent protections, including a pathway to citizenship. I know what a crime looks like. And I will tell you, an undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. It is wrong to somehow suggest that an undocumented immigrant is a criminal. Being an undocumented immigrant is not a crime. I know what a crime looks like. An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal. 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 An undocumented immigrant is not a criminal, and we have to correct course in this conversation. We're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border. But I am in favor of saying that we're not going to treat people who are undocumented across the border as criminals. That's correct. That is correct. Responsible behaviors among everybody in the community, and just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean that we're not going to walk into that home and check to see if you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs.
Have you heard from